What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Apex presented by RockShock. I'm sitting here with Lex Albrecht and Canadian. What were you, a national champion? I know you were on the national team.
Yeah, I was on the national team for almost a decade, and I was never champion, but I stood on the podium 3 times at nationals.
There you go. So, represented the podium at nationals. She's been in the world tour. Like her background, her palmares, like there's a long list. I wish I knew them all, but I don't, and hopefully we're going to dive into that here in a bit. But she's going to come hang out with us at the Apex, and I just wanted to get her on the podcast to get to know her as an athlete, her as a person, and why she wants to come all the way to my little hometown, all the way from Canada, where she's got great maple cream cookies up there, and hopefully she'll bring us some
I can do that.
when she comes to the Apex. But yeah, Lex, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, thanks, John. How are you doing?
Just living the dream, living the dream. But yeah, so tell us a bit about you. Who is Lex? Like, where does Lex get started in cycling? How does she find herself on the national team and representing her country and, being in the world tour of cycling?
Well, none of this was planned, actually. I fell in love with cycling when I was a teen, and my family moved from the city I was living in out to the country, and I felt like totally isolated out there. I was frustrated. I felt like I was living in the middle of nowhere. And then I realized that with my bike, I could still go wherever I wanted to and do whatever I wanted to. And that's how I fell in love with cycling. It was because of like the feeling of freedom and independence that it brought to me. And then there's a lot in between it, but then the rest is kind of history. I saved up my money when I was 16 and 17 years old. It took a long time. Had 2 part-time jobs at once to get my first road bike.
Yeah.
Got into like group rides in my local cycling club. And then right after that, I moved to the province of Quebec to start university. But I don't speak French, or now I do, but I didn't speak French at that point. So when I moved, my bike was like a way for me to kind of integrate into the community, even though I couldn't speak with people. I'd do the group rides and I'd like point out gravel and like rocks and stuff or cracks. And I'd feel like I was communicating with people once a week, every Tuesday night.
Cool. So I got a question for you because I got some friends in Quebec and they say it's some of the best riding in Canada. Is that true? Because I feel like you'll have a non-biased opinion because you're not actually from Quebec proper, but you've lived in both areas of Canada. Do you think it's some of the best riding out there?
I definitely think so. There's a huge variety. You have like all different types of terrain. My most favorite place in the world to ride is actually in Quebec. It's a national park called the Mauricie National Park.
Okay.
But one thing is that you have to be able to appreciate what I like to call Canadian pavé, which is like, we do have kind of like lousy quality of asphalt on many of the roads.
Yeah.
But if you can learn to appreciate it and roll over it, and like people will travel to Belgium and Holland and stuff to ride the cobbles. Like you could still travel to Quebec to ride this cracked pavement too, and it's fun,
Oh yeah, I agree. Well, you've been pro long enough. Like going to Tucson, you're gonna end up on some cracked pavement roads. Like, in Tucson and Arizona, like the roads there are awful, but it's what you get out of Tucson. And then in Colorado Springs, have you been there yet? Or is this going to be your first time? So have you done the mountain bike trails out there?
No, I've only been road cycling. I did like some mid-level altitude training around Colorado Springs before. I did a lot of training around Boulder and up in Nederland, raced a little bit like around Breckenridge.
Yeah, so we have pea gravel in the Colorado Springs area is what we like to call it. And it's literally like some of the turns are like in some of the berms are filled with this like what they also call it kitty litter, and it's just this like very, very thin gravel, and you don't use your front brake. That's the big takeaway in that. You're really heavy on the back brake because that's where all your weight is, but you'll be experiencing that at the Apex. So anyways, yeah, so you find yourself in Quebec and you're getting into cycling. And so how does this all start to take off for you?
Well, I was studying medical biology in French, and it was really tough because, as I said, I didn't speak French, and I was putting a lot of pressure on myself to succeed. And it was I don't know, it was tough. And I thought, I need to learn how to try something, be lousy at it, and just accept it and just roll with it. So I thought I'd try some bike racing because, like, the concept really, really intimidated me. I knew that I'd suck at it. And so I just like, I have to just
Okay.
learn how to deal with it. And so
Yeah.
that's essentially why I tried my first races. But
Are you
then
just really, I got a question because I know there's people listening to this podcast, and you know, when you're listening to the radio station or a podcast and you're like asking the question and you just want the host to ask this question. But so you're saying you're learning French at this time, and then you're also learning biology in French. Am
oh
I
yeah,
hearing that right? So why,
it's tough, man. And I
what,
had no
like what
friends.
made,
I couldn't have
why'd you do that?
conversation.
Why did you do that? Like, are you just really good at biology that you're like, oh yeah, in this process, I'm going to learn French as well?
No, well, with biology, fortunately, you don't have to write like super long reports and stuff. So I knew that that was a subject that I could study in French. It took a lot of work though. Like I
You're
remember,
insane.
I don't know,
You're
man.
insane.
I just like to taste all the flavors in life's buffet, you know?
Yeah. Wild. It's like, yeah, so I don't know how to speak French and I want to learn more about biology. You know what? Why don't I just do it all at the same time at a university level? You're mad. Okay, now that question's answered, so continue. Sorry. Because I
Yeah.
know some people had to be thinking, like, did we skip something? Did she just learn French all of a sudden?
No, so I honestly ask myself what I was doing sometimes, but I mean, I guess this is just part of who I am. I put myself in sticky situations and try to figure out how to make them work.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah, so that's how I kind of got into bike racing though, just to like have like an outlet and a way to figure out how to fail at something and not even care. But I started having more and more fun. And then I realized that there was this thing where I could get like a government bursary if I met a couple qualifications, and one of them was doing Canadian national championships. So I spent like almost all the money that I had to get out to the national championships in Alberta. By the time I got there, I was just chomping at the bit to ride. And I kind of frustrated too that it was costing me so much money because I was in a financially tight situation, I guess.
Sound like a cyclist, sound like a pro cyclist trying to chase their dream. So continue.
Totally. And on the start line, people were just taking their sweet old time clipping in and stuff. And I was like I just want to ride my flipping bike. So I took off on the start line and I rode off the front for almost the entire Canadian National Championships race in Edmonton, which is like really not a very good strategy, but I just didn't care. I just wanted to ride my bike and I knew nothing about bike racing strategies anyways. But that got me noticed by the Canadian national team, who then invited me to do some development projects over in Europe, which got me noticed by a small semi-pro team. And the following year, that gave me access to do the bigger races in United States. And I started getting some good results. Like I was like queen of the mountain, I guess, at Philly, and got a few best young riders jerseys and polka dot jerseys at other races. And then I got my first pro contract the following year. I didn't plan on it, just happened.
Wow.
Just
And so literally just the passion. And see, I just did a podcast the other day on another podcast, but I was talking to an athlete where it's just like going into it without expectation is sometimes where you land the best results.
Oh, amen. I totally agree with that.
And just going in and doing and literally, you ready for the most cliche thing in the world? It's literally you're just doing what you love, and like remember why we do this, right? Like why are we kicking our legs over the bike? Why are we even doing this? Like when you explain it to somebody, it's like, yeah, I ride 100 miles and race as hard as I can. It's like, why would you ever do that? It's like, because I love it, right? And
yeah.
and I think that's where the best results come, is when you don't put that pressure on yourself and you go out there and you do what you can. So that it all kind of makes sense. And so now, how do you get to the Apex? Like, why do you want to come do the Apex? How did you find out about the Apex, and what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I just love riding my bike. Like I've heard stories of other cyclists who, like, years after they started racing professionally, they start to get a little bit burnt out. They put their bike aside and they never touch it again. And that was like always my nightmare. And I'd raced pro since 2012. And like during my career, there were some pretty intense periods where I did put a lot of pressure on myself to succeed and, fulfill like what I had committed to do for teams and try to accomplish certain things. But I never lost the passion, and I still have it. And I've been looking for different ways to have fun on the bike in brand new ways that are pushing my limits again, kind of the same way that I did it when I first started getting into cycling. And I just want to figure out more things on the bike. I want to meet more people. I want to ride my bike in different contexts, you know,
Yeah.
and yeah, I heard about the Pikes Peak Apex and I was like, oh, this is right up my alley. Because I haven't been to Colorado for a little while, but some of my most favorite cycling memories are in Colorado. It's such a beautiful place. The communities are amazing and the riding is just out of this world. Plus, it's kind of cool to ride at altitude too. You can't get that opportunity just anywhere.
No, and see, I think it's cool that you say that because I think that fears a lot of people. So, what do you mean by it's cool to ride at altitude? Because a lot of people are like, oh, I don't know if I want to come. It's at altitude, and everybody has these like horror stories of altitude. Altitude, it's like this big mean monster if you're not from it. But I honestly, if we're being honest, I think it's the other way around. For me, at least, like I've lived at both. I've lived at sea level, and then I've also lived at altitude. In the last few years, I've spent majority of my time living at sea level. I mean, or at altitude. And when I go back down to sea level, it takes a while for me to get adjusted to the humidity and just
Oh
the
yeah.
thick air. And it's like, oh, it's hard. And so, and yeah, it does take some time with the altitude, but it's nothing like breathing in 100-degree wet weather. Like I feel like I'm swimming.
Yeah, I've had that experience too, going from one climate to the other.
Oh, it's insane. So, so yeah.
Well, I think that going to altitude is just kind of like riding your bike on a different type of terrain. It's just giving you like a different set of elements that you have the opportunity to experience and play with a little bit. Like, I think going into altitude, knowing a little bit about what to expect might help. But it's definitely not something that should be intimidating or scary. It's not like painful or it's not torturous. It's just that like once you go into the red zone and you get into like a little bit more of an anaerobic state, it's a lot harder to recover than when you're down at sea level. So just the way that you dose your efforts and play around with those is a little bit different. And it's kind of like cool to feather that line and go over that threshold and make like, I don't want to call it the mistake, but just, yeah, go over that threshold a couple times, see what it feels like. It's a totally new experience. It's awesome. It's kind of like going scuba diving, maybe a little less.
Yeah, no, for sure. Just trying something different. I love it. And so, how are you preparing for the Apex? Because it's like you were a pro, and now you're kind of retired and having fun and having a blast. Like you're essentially still competitive and still gonna go for it. But at this point, I think, and especially me with a professional cycling, I do know that there's that current moment where it's like you're all in and all focused, and sometimes the fun can get lost, and I think that's where the burnout comes. That's what we were talking about earlier. It's like that burnout. But I think with you now, and I think you probably even see it, like you get to pick your schedule, you get to pick your races, you get to pick these things that you get to go do. And so how are you preparing for the Pikes Peak Apex?
I'm just trying to do everything that I can to have fun, like riding
Sick.
my mountain bike as much as I can, riding my gravel bike and my road bike as much as I can. I actually just got back from a really cool experience that I think is actually good prep for the Pikes Peak Apex. I had the opportunity to do a 6-day mountain bike stage race in Morocco
Oh
called the
wow.
Titan Desert.
Okay.
I did that with a team called White Angels, presented by Santivari. And actually, I had some really cool teammates like Sylvain Chavanel, who's done like the most Tour de France's of anybody in the entire world. He was on
Yeah.
our team. Like Veronique Fortin, the former Canadian national champion, was on our team. Benjamin Paredes was on our team. He's the current Spanish national champion. Anyways, a whole bunch of like really like cool cyclists that are way stronger and faster than I am were there. And we raced through the flipping desert for 6 days. And like sometimes we didn't know where we were. Like we were allowed to cut the course as much as we want. Like there weren't actual trails or anything. It was just get to this checkpoint, to this checkpoint, to this checkpoint. And dealing with the different elements there, like the heat and the sun, and then the navigating aspects was definitely challenging. And I thought, oh, this could be a kind of cool prep for the Pikes Peak Apex because there are longer stages and dealing with different elements and just figuring it out and having fun along the way.
No, that's super awesome. And so I guess, before we let you go and kind of let get ready to see you here in the coming months at the Apex, what's one tidbit of advice that you would probably give somebody that's like on the fence of coming, maybe thinking about coming? What's some advice to somebody that's probably thinking about coming? Like, why should they come to the Apex?
If this is like something that somebody's on the fence about, man, I say definitely do it. Like cycling is like, there are so many parallels with cycling and life. You know, fear can only live in the future. And if we like just live in the moment a little bit and dare to take a little tiny step out of our comfort zone, we can trust ourselves that once we do get into the future, once the future becomes the present, we're going to be able to manage it just fine. And we can actually open up the doors to a lot of like really awesome opportunities just by making that one tiny little move in the moment and trusting ourselves that everything is going to work out just fine. So I'd say definitely give yourself the opportunity to live something brand new and have this experience. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? Like,
Yeah, for
well,
sure.
there's
Sometimes,
only like amazing things that can happen, I'm pretty sure.
yeah, and sometimes we have to be careful asking that question, but
Oh yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, let's not think about that with
But
you.
hey, let's not think about that too much. No, for sure. And I really appreciate that and actually respect that, because it's kind of one of those things where it's like you'll never know until you know.
Yeah.
And so, not doing it, you definitely will never know. And so I can definitely appreciate, going out of your comfort zone and also knowing that somebody's probably just as nervous about it as you are.
Oh, yeah.
Even some of those pros and even some of those elite athletes are just as nervous as you are. And so kind of bringing that equality in is great. Well, Lex, I appreciate your time. I appreciate getting to know you. We're super excited for the maple cookies that you're going to be bringing to the Apex, and we're also super excited to see you and hang out. Guys, if you haven't already, please make sure you go check out Lex's social media down in the description below. Also, be sure to ask us any questions that you may have. Don't hesitate to shoot us a message on Instagram, and also make sure you say hey to Lex and make sure you say that you listen to this episode. That'd be really cool. And yeah, other than that, we look forward to seeing you guys at the Apex. Cheers.